Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. It's Thursday, February 5th, 2025, and if you've been watching the skies across the United Kingdom over these past few days, you already know that settled weather remains a distant memory as we push deeper into what's shaping up to be one of the more persistently active patterns we've seen this winter season. The Met Office has maintained multiple weather warnings across various regions of the UK heading into this weekend, and I want to break down exactly what we're looking at here. Where the worst conditions are expected to develop, what kind of timeline we're dealing with from now through the extended 5-day outlook period, and crucially, what you need to be doing to stay safe as these successive weather systems continue their march across the British Isles. Let's start with where we stand right now this Thursday morning, because the pattern that's been dominating our weather over the past week shows absolutely no signs of backing down. The Met Office has issued a yellow warning for wind across substantial portions of Scotland, covering areas from the Western Isles clear across to the northeastern coast, with that warning remaining in effect through Friday evening. We're talking sustained wind speeds reaching 40 to 50 miles per hour fairly routinely across exposed coastal areas and elevated terrain, with gusts punching up to 65 to 70 miles per hour in the most exposed locations. And those are numbers that absolutely demand respect. When you're getting into that upper threshold of yellow warning criteria, you're dealing with conditions that can bring down tree limbs or to create hazardous driving conditions, particularly for high-sided vehicles, and cause localised power disruptions where exposed infrastructure takes the brunt of those sustained gale-force winds. Moving south from Scotland, we've got a separate but equally concerning yellow warning for rain that's been posted for portions of Wales and southwestern England, and this one runs from Friday morning straight through Saturday evening. The rainfall accumulations we're looking at here range from 30 to 50 millimetres fairly widely across the warned region. But here's where it gets particularly problematic. Across the higher elevations of Snowdonia and the Brecon Beacons, some of the more aggressive model solutions are suggesting localised totals that could push 70 to 80 millimetres over that roughly 36-hour period. Now, just ordinarily those numbers might not raise immediate red flags, but we need to remember the context we're operating in here. The ground across much of Wales and southwestern England is already thoroughly saturated from the repeated weather systems we've processed over the past 2 weeks. Stream and river levels are running elevated, and you add another substantial slug of rainfall on top of that existing saturation, and you're looking at heightened flooding potential, particularly in the usual suspects: low-lying areas, areas with poor drainage infrastructure, and regions adjacent to rivers and streams that are already running high. The driving force behind this unsettled pattern continues to be our position relative to the jet stream, which has maintained a fairly amplified configuration that keeps steering low-pressure systems directly across or just to the north of the United Kingdom. What we're seeing is a classic conveyor belt setup where one low-pressure system exits stage east, and before we can even catch our breath and dry things out, the next system is already organising out over the Atlantic and beginning its approach toward our shores. The latest guidance from both the GFS and ECMWF models shows remarkable agreement on the overall pattern, continuing through the weekend and well into next week. Though, as always with these active patterns, the specific timing and intensity of individual systems contains some run-to-run variability that we need to account for in our planning. Let me walk you through the timeline here day by day, because understanding when the worst conditions are likely to impact your specific area is crucial for making informed decisions about travel plans, outdoor activities, and general preparedness. Today, Thursday, we're dealing with the leading edge of this next system, which means conditions deteriorate as we progress through the day. We started with some drier, relatively calmer weather across many areas this morning, but by this afternoon and evening, rain spreads northeast across Wales, southwestern England, and eventually into the Midlands and southern England. The winds pick up across Scotland and Northern Ireland through the day today, with those gusts I mentioned earlier, that 65 to 70 mile per hour range in exposed spots, becoming increasingly likely through Thursday evening and overnight into Friday. Or Friday itself looks like arguably the most active day of this 5-day period we're examining. That yellow warning for wind across Scotland remains in effect through Friday evening for good reason. The low-pressure system responsible for driving this wind field tracks across northern Scotland Friday morning and into Friday afternoon, placing the tightest pressure gradient and therefore the strongest winds right across the northern half of the country. Meanwhile, that rainfall warning for Wales and southwestern England kicks into higher gear Friday morning as the warm sector of this system moves across, bringing some of the heaviest precipitation rates we'll see during this entire event. We're looking at rainfall rates that could reach 5 to 8 millimeters per hour during the most intense bands Friday afternoon. And when you sustain that kind of rate for several hours, those accumulation totals can climb surprisingly quickly. As we transition from Friday into Saturday, the system responsible for Friday's impacts gradually pulls away towards Scandinavia. But here's the thing. We don't get any meaningful break because the next low-pressure system is already developing out over the Atlantic and beginning its approach. Saturday starts off with some improvement across Scotland and Northern Ireland as that first system clears out. But Wales, southwestern England, and eventually central and southern England remain under that yellow warning for rain through Saturday evening. Saturday night into early Sunday, we're watching the next system approach from the west, and current guidance suggests this one could bring another round of strong winds, particularly to southern and southeastern England, Sunday into Monday. It's too early for the Met Office to post warnings that far out, but this is something we're monitoring closely, and I would expect additional alerts could be issued as we get better model agreement on the specifics. Sunday and Monday continue the theme. Periods of rain interspersed with showery conditions, winds remaining elevated, if not quite reaching warning criteria for most areas, and very little in the way of prolonged, dry or calm intervals. The 5-day outlook from the Met Office explicitly states that the unsettled pattern continues, with further spells of rain and wind likely across many parts of the UK. And that extended forecast language is about as clear as it gets. They're telling us not to expect any pattern change or significant improvement in the near term. Now let's talk about what this means on the ground in practical terms. Because understanding the forecast is one thing, but translating that into appropriate actions and preparedness measures is where we really protect ourselves and our property. If you're in the warned areas for wind across Scotland, today and tomorrow are days to secure any loose items in your garden or yard. Garden furniture, trampolines, wheelie bins, anything that can become a projectile in 60 to 70 mile-per-hour gusts needs to be tied down or brought inside. If you've got travel plans that involve exposed routes, or particularly coastal roads or elevated crossings like the Skye Bridge or the Forth Road Bridge, expect restrictions for high-sided vehicles and possible closures during the peak wind periods, Friday morning and afternoon. Power cuts are possible in the strongest winds, so having a torch with fresh batteries, keeping mobile devices charged, and knowing where your fuse box is located are all sensible precautions. For those of you in the rainfall warning areas across Wales and southwestern England, Friday and Saturday are the critical days. If you're in an area with known flooding history, now is the time to move valuables to higher floors. Check that drains and gutters around your property are clear and flowing freely, and stay updated on river level information from the Environment Agency. Travel disruption is likely on some roads due to spray and standing water, and where flooding does occur, journeys could take significantly longer than usual. Remember the critical safety advice that applies every single time we deal with flooding. Never attempt to drive through floodwater, even if it looks shallow. Just 30 centimetres of flowing water is enough to move your car, and floodwater often conceals deeper holes, missing drain covers, or other hazards that can trap your vehicle. Turn around, don't drown isn't just a catchy phrase, it's genuinely life-saving advice. More broadly, regardless of whether you're directly in a warned area, the unsettled conditions affect everyone across the UK to some degree this weekend and into next week. Outdoor events and activities face likely disruption or cancellation. If you're involved in organising anything outdoors, have contingency plans and clear communication channels to inform participants if conditions force changes. Sports matches, festivals, outdoor markets, all of these need weather contingency planning when we're dealing with this kind of active pattern. For hill walkers and mountaineers, conditions across Scottish mountains and high ground elsewhere range from challenging to dangerous, with that combination of strong winds, low visibility in cloud and precipitation, and saturated ground creating numerous hazards. Mountain rescue teams are already stretched during busy periods. Don't add to their burden by venturing into the high country unprepared, or when conditions exceed your skill and equipment level. Let's put this into some broader context. Because while an active spell of weather in February isn't exactly unprecedented across the UK, the persistence of this pattern is notable. We're now into our third consecutive week of repeatedly having weather warnings posted somewhere across the British Isles, and that sustained period of unsettled conditions is something we typically see maybe a few times during an average winter season, but not as the dominant pattern for weeks on end. Looking at the climatological data, February typically brings us an average of about 70 to 90 millimetres of rainfall across Wales and southwestern England for the entire month, and we're on track to exceed that monthly normal in just the first 2 weeks of the month given what we've already received, plus what's in the forecast. That's not to say we're shattering any all-time records here. The wettest Februaries on record brought totals more than double the monthly average, but we're certainly trending well above normal. And when you combine above-average precipitation with repeatedly strong winds, that's the recipe for cumulative impacts that build over time, even if no single event is particularly extreme. The question I know many of you are asking is, when does this pattern break? When can we expect a return to more settled conditions? And the honest answer is that medium-range guidance beyond this 5-day period remains frustratingly unclear. Some ensemble members of the extended forecast models suggest a potential ridge of high pressure could build from the south late next week, potentially bringing a brief window of drier, more calmer weather next weekend around February 15th and 16th. But other ensemble members maintain the unsettled westerly flow continuing without significant break. That kind of spread in the ensemble solutions tells us the pattern evolution remains uncertain beyond about 7 days, and trying to pin down specifics beyond that 5-day outlook period would be speculation rather than solid forecasting. What I can tell you is that as we head toward the second half of February, climatologically, we do start seeing gradual changes as we edge closer to meteorological spring on March 1st. Average temperatures begin their slow climb, daylight hours continue extending, and we statistically see somewhat less frequent deep Atlantic lows. But whether that climatological tendency translates into actual settled weather for any particular February is always a roll of the dice. And this February so far seems determined to keep reminding us that winter weather across the UK maintains its capacity for being persistently wet, windy, and generally miserable when it wants to be. Before we wrap up, I want to emphasise the importance of staying updated as this situation continues to evolve. The warnings I've discussed with you today are accurate as of Thursday morning, February 5th, but the Met Office regularly updates their warning matrix as new model data comes in and as systems develop. Additional warnings could be issued. Existing warnings could be extended or upgraded in severity, or in the best-case scenario. Warnings could be lifted if systems underperform or track differently than expected. The official source for weather warnings is always the Met Office website and their app, and I strongly encourage everyone to check those official sources regularly, particularly before making travel plans or decisions about outdoor activities. For localised impacts in your specific area, your local Environment Agency Flood Information Service provides real-time updates on river levels, flood warnings, and flood alerts. That information can be crucial if you're in low-lying areas or near rivers and streams. Traffic Scotland, Traffic Wales, and Highways England all provide road condition updates, including closures, restrictions, and accidents caused by weather conditions. And checking those before setting out on any journey during active weather is just common sense that can save you significant time and potential danger. I'll be continuing to monitor this situation closely over the coming days, and will bring you updates as conditions evolve and as we get better clarity on that next system approaching for Sunday and Monday. If we see any significant changes to the forecast, or if additional warnings are issued, I'll get content out to you as quickly as possible. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel with notifications turned on so you don't miss those time-sensitive updates. Weather like this is exactly why having reliable, detailed forecast information matters. And I'm committed to keeping you informed with the most current data interpreted through that meteorological expertise lens that helps you understand not just what's happening, but why it's happening and what it means for your specific situation. Stay safe out there, folks. Take those weather warnings seriously. Adjust your plans where necessary to avoid unnecessary risk. And remember that no journey or activity is worth putting yourself or others in danger. We'll get through this active pattern together, and I'll be here to guide you through it with the information you need to make smart decisions. Take care, and I'll see you in the next update.